You're listening to the My Simplified Life podcast, and this is episode number 178. Welcome to the My Simplified Life podcast, a place where you will learn that your past and even your present don't define your future. Regardless of what stage of life you're in, I want you to feel inspired and encouraged to pursue your dreams, simplify your life, and start taking action today. I'm your host, Michelle Glogovac, and I'm excited to share my stories and life lessons with you while taking you on my own journey. This is My Simplified Life. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Michelle Glogovac. Something I am seeing more and more is the question around whether you should host a podcast or be a guest on a podcast. And since I am very familiar with both of these things, I thought it would be a great time to list out the pros and cons so that you can decide which is best for you and if it's a combination of the two or one over the other. So let's first dive into what is a podcast host. Well, you're listening to one right now. It is someone who creates their own show, like myself. You create episodes. Most of the time, it's weekly. Sometimes it can be bi-weekly. I've seen shows that are once a month, that type of thing. You can do seasons. So it's a variety of whatever you want to make of it. Versus a podcast guest is someone that is invited to be on an already established show, to be interviewed, share their knowledge, share their book, share their business, their tips, their tools, all of that type of thing. So for both of them, there are pros and cons. Now, for the pros, on podcast hosting, it's your own show. So you get to make it whatever you want it to be. You can create content that is whatever your heart's desire. So you see that I have interviews with authors of books that I love. I interview experts and entrepreneurs that I really find interesting and I want to learn more about. I really become selfish because I love the guests that I have on my show and I want to get to know them more. So you get to do that, but at the same time, you have to be creating that content. You have to be really religious about putting out episodes. If you do it once a month, that's fine, but you have to stick to that schedule, because your listeners come to expect it. They know that, every Tuesday, that a new episode is going to drop for My Simplified Life. So you know that you can rely on listening to it. If you're sporadic and you're not being consistent, then how do people know that they should be tuning in? Because just like, I watch Ted Lasso every week, and I know that every Tuesday night by 9 p.m., Wednesday's episode has dropped. And so we are watching it. It's something that's basically on the calendar. So you want to keep that in mind if you're going to host a show, that you need to be regular about it, regular and consistent. Now, when it comes to the time, a 30-minute episode takes 4 hours to produce. 4 hours. That is a lot of time. You have to come up with the content, your outreach for if you're having guests on it, or you're outlining what the episode is about. You're recording the episode. You are editing it, or you've hired an editor to do that. You have to create the social media content around it. There are show notes that are involved. There's a lot that goes into a single episode. So a time commitment is a big thing, and that's a big factor that you need to consider if you're going to host your own show. The one great thing, though, is that this is a great marketing tool if you're a business owner. You get to showcase yourself and what your expertise is, whether it's you as an individual or your business, and it's really self-promotion in an amazing way because you get to educate others and highlight yourself without it coming off as being a cocky advertisement, salesy thing if you're doing it the right way. Now, let's talk about also the audience. If you are doing your own show, you have to build that audience. You might have an already established audience on your social media, on your email list, people who are, coming to your website already, but you have to get them to become listeners of your show. You're starting from scratch. You'll be promoting it on your website, on your newsletter, on your social media, but those people still need to come to you. So let's flip this away and also talk about podcast guesting. And you know what? Before I get to that, there's one other aspect of podcast hosting you need to consider, and that's the price. You're paying for a monthly host. I use Libsyn. You can get a discount if you use the promo code LIFE, but you have to pay for that. So that way it's distributed to all of the platforms. If you have an editor, you have to pay for your editor as well. So it's not something that's free. It is low barrier entry because it's not super expensive to host your own show, but there is a cost and a price involved. You should also consider your setup. Do you have a good microphone? Do you have headphones? What are you going to record on for your software? So these are all things that you need to consider, but they're also going to be considerations if you're a podcast guest. So some of the cons, let's say, for being a podcast guest is that it also takes time. You have to research the proper shows that you want to pitch to. You have to create your speaking topics. You have to pitch to those hosts. You have to follow up with them. So all of that takes time. But when you show up, it's taking only 30 to 60 minutes, and then you're absolutely done. You're not spending that time editing the episode. You should be creating graphics for it, but the host should also be providing you with some of those as well. So the time commitment is going to be much less than if you were hosting your own show. Another great factor to consider is that podcasts already have established audiences. So you don't have to go and find an audience to listen to your new show. The show already has that for you. So you will be promoting it to other people, but these should be new listeners, a new audience that hasn't heard from you before. Therefore, it allows you to reach a greater audience. In addition to that, you're not only reaching the audience of listeners, but you're also going to be promoting it, and the host is promoting it, and it continues this ripple effect that makes the audience even bigger than just the listening audience, but the following audience as well. Being a guest also provides you with marketing content that you can repurpose, and you should be repurposing it. Like I said, you should be promoting it on your social media, but it should also be going on your website. Just as a host is creating show notes, you should have a blog post with it. You should be creating graphics that not only promote the podcast episode itself, but also utilizing the quotes from yourself that showcase how you're the expert, how you have shined through with all of your knowledge on this interview. And so it's a great way to continue promoting the episode while also promoting yourself and not doing it in a car salesman type of way. When we talk about time, your interviews, usually on average, they're about 30 minutes. So you're going in for the 30 minutes, not for 4 hours, like I mentioned before. And then you're going to promote it on the back end, but that's also a part of content creation that you're already doing. So in the end, it's saving you time because this content is being handed to you versus you having to create it from scratch. There are no production costs. You are showing up. You might be paying someone like myself to do this work for you, but you're not doing an additional cost of trying to find an editor or the hosting monthly fee, that sort of a thing. You should be investing in good quality microphone, headset type of thing. If you work with me, that is kind of included. So that's an extra bonus that you don't have to think about. But you should make forth that effort to buy a microphone that makes you sound good, sound professional, and also showcase that you care. You want to be present for these interviews that you're doing. And so you have spent a few bucks. And when I say a few bucks, we're talking like $50 or less. You can spend more, but it's really $50 will get you a really good microphone that will work and allow you to show up as a professional. So those are minimal costs, in my opinion, for you to really sound great and be able to promote yourself in a way that allows you to show your knowledge, showcase your expertise, highlight the wonderful things in your new book and your business, all while not being the salesperson. If you've been listening to other episodes on how to be a great guest, definitely recommend you do that, because then you'll understand what I mean about selling yourself without coming off as a salesperson. You're going to also be able to share your story and your content as a guest. You don't have to have your own show in order to do that. Your topics should all include that type of thing. And that means that you're also not creating new content every single week. There is a pressure and a stress that comes along with that. I will be fully honest with you because I like to be candid and share what it's like to be a podcast host with you. There is some stress in what am I going to talk about? What does anybody want to hear? Is this a topic that's going to resonate with other people? And that's something I at times struggle with, especially if I don't batch ahead and get interviews lined up and consider topics. And right now I'm over a month ahead, which is amazing and means that I'm not stressing myself out with wondering, what do I talk about? After 170, this is number 178, but I've already recorded and have slated over 180 episodes. That's a lot of talking. That's a lot of ideas. It's a lot of content. So knowing that you can show up as a guest and you're focused on a specific type of content is a huge stress reliever, in my opinion, and something to consider. So if you are thinking about, well, should I host one or should I be a guest? Where do I start? My advice is to start as a guest. This is going to help you with the way that you record, being a guest, being interviewed by people, how you talk. It's going to get you more comfortable in that aspect. It's also going to help you decide if this is something you like to do. Do you like to talk into a microphone to other people? Do you like to speak in general about your story and to share that with other people? For some, that's not a yes. Do you want to do this all the time, every single week? And can you commit to doing it? Because it should no way be a one and done. Now, I think that everyone has amazing stories, amazing tips and knowledge to be shared, but that doesn't necessarily mean that everyone should be a podcast host. And it's really for all of the reasons that I mentioned before of being consistent and being able to create that content all the time. How are you going to structure your show? And do you want to put in the necessary work to create an audience of listeners? And how ultimately is a podcast show going to benefit your business and your life? And, what is your goal? You have to think about your ultimate goal for both guesting and hosting a podcast. Is it simply to have a show that you can say is yours? Because that's really not what's going to do it. That's not going to make your show successful. What will make your show successful is that you want to put in the time, the energy, the commitment, the money, and the knowledge to share with other people whatever it is you want to share. If you're not willing to do those things, then there's really no point in hosting your own show. On the other hand, if you want to be a guest, are you willing to share your knowledge freely? Are you willing to not only share your knowledge, but then share the interviews that you have landed that have gone live with your audience? It's a great thing to be a guest and create a larger audience for yourself, and then later on decide, do you want to try using that audience that you've established to create your own show? These are all things that you should be considering. I'm going to put a freebie in the show notes that you can download about the pros and cons of podcast hosting and podcast guesting. And as always, if you have more questions on this topic, feel free to DM me, email me, reach out. I'm more than happy to walk you through what both types of things look like and to help you make that decision as to which is the best for you and for your business and for whatever you may have coming up. Because don't forget, the basis of this show is that your past and your present don't define your future. You do. So if you want something different for your future when it comes to podcasts, you get to make that decision. Just make sure that you make an informed decision.